30 Years a Watchtower Slave, Chapter 4, entitled A Look at the Organization in America. Now, the author is living in Germany at this time, and so he gives us a glimpse into what's happening in America. The first subheading is The Judge Takes Over. Most of us are familiar with the way Judge Rutherford took control of the presidency of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. C.T. Russell left in a will and expressed his desire that the Watchtower be in control of a group of men rather than a single person. Yet Joseph F. Rutherford, in a power move, seized control of the presidency, threw out people at Brooklyn Bethel, even disfellowshipping some, and came out on top as the president of the Watchtower Society. He did it in such a way where he became a hero and really shifted the blame, shifted focus off of the way that he took control into a different area. And the way that he did that was by printing anti-government, anti-war, seditious material, and he was thrown into jail, he and 7 other associates, and they were eventually released. The author says that they were fully exonerated, but I believe in my research that they were freed because of a technicality, and after the war was over, the United States Supreme Court just simply did not retry them in court again. So I'm not quite sure that they were completely exonerated. But of course, Rutherford spun Bible prophecy in such a manner that now he was God's chosen one. They were freed from Babylon the Great, and that was his life's mission, was to cause hell for Christendom, because that's who he believed was responsible for putting him in jail. And so now, after his release, it was time to build up this new nation. And he mentions, the author does, that the Watchtower Society of Brooklyn was now beginning to claim that it was the way to salvation, to carry millions of people through Armageddon and into this new world society of 1,000-year reign. Sounds very Illuminati-ish to me. The next subheading is The Judge Plans Changes. And these changes were organizational policies. And it began with the convention at Cedar Point, Ohio in 1922, where delegates enthusiastically passed a resolution sponsored by the society entitled Advertise, 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 the King and His Kingdom. Well, the delegates thought that they were advertising doing God's work, but really they were doing the bidding of the New World Society, this kingdom under Judge Rutherford, and they would begin publishing their kingdom as the only way to survive the end of the world. The next subheading is entitled The Society Puts Its House in Order. And this begins with the changes that were taking place in the headquarters there in Brooklyn. So they had to weed out all those who were in opposition to the previous organizational policies. Some of these changes were previously the congregations of Bible students were completely autonomous. They elected their own elders. They had their own preaching arrangements. That was no longer the case. The society controlled all of that. They elected the elders. They set up a preaching program and changed the curriculum of the meetings, where previously alone the Word of God formed the material for discussion and study. Now it was to integrate the organization's books as part of the teaching curriculum at meetings. So the initial steps was the acceptance of the leadership of the Watchtower Society and to give backing to them, and those who did so again were kept. Those who resisted were discarded. The author says only a small percentage of Bible students accepted this policy. Those who did, the majority, the rest of those really passively acquiesced to these changes, probably thinking that this was still God's organization, so they went along with the flow. The next step in this indoctrination was publishing an entirely new set of books and booklets, which would pave the way for total organization. So the literature was intended to affect the change of thinking on everyone that came across the literature. And this was gradually to supplant individual thinking and replace that with organizational thinking. They began purchasing and printing their own literature, beginning with the book The Harp of God in 1922. And now it was able to publish and print books much, much cheaper. Give these out to their publishers, who would then charge, who knows, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times what they were able to print the material. And it mentions in the book that the use of the Watchtower Society published books had a threefold purpose. Number one, to effect mass thinking within the orbit of the organization on matters pertaining to the Scriptures. So everyone associated with the Bible students would begin thinking the same manners, the same way that the organization wanted them to think. Number two, to occupy all Bible students, if possible, with the selling of these books to all mankind, and in doing so to raise issues for cleavage. So again, this was the free labor that they got from their publishers. And three was to form a financial backlog of funds to support a sustained worldwide increase to come. So again, this was to make the Watchtower Society rich. So in the decades from 1921 to 1931, about 75% of the original Bible students had left. Those that were remaining, the 25%, were now theocratically minded drones. So now the organization could continue to change whatever it wanted without any opposition from inside. So now these ones were trained in the idea of class thinking in opposition to individual thinking, independent thinking, critical thinking. So the 20s rolled around with marked changes over the society that were vastly different from previous to the 20s with C.T. Russell. So now there were quotas. Now there were changes to the curriculum of the congregations. And now they were to begin reporting their field service time. Again, a lot of people did not like this, as they thought this was an individual conscience matter. But this became a requirement in 1925. And of course, we know that these field service reports are going to be the benchmark on who is a good Christian, who is a spiritual Christian, and who's not. The more hours you can put, you can pioneer, well, the quicker you are to climb up that Watchtower ladder. So we see a change of that from that of autonomous congregations electing, basically doing their own thing but being called a Bible student, to that under C.T. Russell. Now we have a big change under the judge, Joseph F. Rutherford, of that of organization, that of conventions, advertising the king as kingdom, preaching is a mandatory activity for Bible students. Not only that, you have to report, and anyone in opposition was now brandished as spiritually weak, not having humility, or even being called the evil slave class. And so once all these ones were rooted out, as mentioned earlier in the chapter, that 75% had left, well, now the remaining ones were theocratically minded drones, zombies, who accepted this new nation that was set up under Jehovah God. And so these were the changes that were happening in America. And this will conclude this chapter. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you for taking time to watch and listen to this presentation. Post your comments, like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for the next chapter.